This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We end today's show in Texas, where Uvalde's School District Police Chief Pete Arredondo has resigned from his new position on Uvalde's City Council before ever sitting in a meeting. Arredondo said he made the decision to, quote, minimize further distractions. He's faced widespread criticism over his handling of last month's school massacre when an 18-year-old gunman shot dead 19 fourth graders and their 2 teachers. State authorities say Arredondo was the incident commander who ordered officers to wait in the school's hallway for over an hour instead of confronting the gunman. Texas Department of Public Safety Director Steve McGraw described the local police handling of the shooting as an abject failure. Arredondo says he didn't think he was the incident commander. To talk more about the Uvalde shooting, we're joined by Sewell Chan, editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune, which has submitted dozens of public information requests in an effort to force local and state authorities to release more information about the police response to the massacre. Sewell Chan, thanks so much for being with us. It is unbelievable to think how much media has been in that town and how little information has been released. From Uvalde to the Texas legislature, to the Rangers, Department of Homeland Security, local police were all in that school as 19 10-year-olds and around that age, and 2 of their teachers were shot dead. They waited for an hour, even though they, too, had automatic weapons and shields, we have now learned, and the doors were open to the classroom. Tell us what you know, Sewell Chan.
Hi, Amy. Yeah, you really captured kind of the devastating portrait that's been portrayed by, state officials here in Texas. In addition to the question of who was in charge of the incident, and again, the crucial discrepancy, Arredondo told us he did not think he was the incident commander, but the radio transmissions and other broadcasts that we reviewed suggest that people did consider him in charge. There's also the discrepancy of whether, in fact, the doors were locked. The chief told us that he thought that the doors had been tried and found to be locked, and that the reason for the delay was that they were waiting for a master key to arrive. Now there is a lot of suggestions. There are a lot of suggestions that, in fact, the doors were unlocked all along. There are also other discrepancies. There was a talk on the transmissions of a Harrigan being available, an axe-like tool that firefighters used to enter the classroom. Why was that never used? And then finally, the question of the radios. The chief said he ditched his radios because he was responding to the scene and felt that he didn't need them. But that cost him, of course, a crucial line of communication.
But Sewell, help me with this. When you have multiple law enforcement agencies come to the scene of the crime, how do those in charge, let's say, of the Uvalde Police Department or of the state police cede their control to basically a chief of a 3 or 4 man school police department?
Well, that's one of our questions, and Uvalde doesn't even have a single police department. It has a city police department, which was on the scene, and it also has the school's police unit, a 6-officer unit that was created 4 years ago. So one of the questions we're asking is, why didn't the federal or state authorities who were on the scene take charge of the incident?
And in terms of the refusal of anyone apparently to get Chief Arredondo to testify in one way or another about what he saw or what happened?
Yeah, there are very much efforts to get him to testify. Even that has been a source of confusion, because the chief says that he already gave testimony at least 2 times, and that he wished to get a transcript of that initial testimony before talking to the Texas Department of Public Safety a 3rd time. And it's not yet clear whether or not that transcript has been provided.
Would you say there is a major cover-up going on, Sewell Chan, that goes right up to the state? I mean, we're talking about an area which is along the border. They have poured millions into the police. And you had every level of authority in the state and feds, right? The Department of Homeland Security. There is, every time I hear it all relying on this one man, as Juan was describing, the lowest level of the police, the school's police chief. You have to raise questions about this whole Lone Star Fund that has militarized the border. I mean, if those were undocumented people inside, you could only imagine how quickly the police would be, or the feds would be, moving in. These children in the local community, what happened?
Well, Amy, as a journalist, I tend to avoid the word cover-up unless there's a demonstrated conspiracy of some kind, or kind of definitely demonstrable kind of obfuscation. But I agree with you completely that the heavy militarization of the region raises profound questions about why the police and law enforcement response was so lacking. Right. I also do want to draw attention to the gun safety aspects of this. I mean, the gunman was armed with an AR-15, and we all know what those kinds of assault-style rifles and weapons can do. And I think that if you watch the video carefully, as we've done, part of the hesitancy of the officers going in, I think, was genuinely, confronting kind of a military style, kind of a weapons environment. And I think that raises profound questions about the kinds of arms that people have that they're allowed to have, and hesitation even of trained law enforcement to go in there and confront that.
Sewell Chan, we wanted to go back in time with you because your paper, the Texas Tribune, did an amazing video. And it's about activism, not from today. And clearly the local residents are getting very active and angry. But it goes back to Robb Elementary School. Not the first time police were involved. This is a video produced by the Texas Tribune about how Uvalde used to be known for a 1970 Hispanic student walkout. It features two people, Alfredo Santos, a walkout organizer, and Rebecca Ciprian Moreno, a retired Spanish teacher who took part in the boycott. We want to play the whole thing. It's just about 5 minutes, and I'll read what's written on the screen.
I was in the walkout. I was a junior in high school, and it was April of 1970. I was sitting in my English class. We were already kind of waiting for the sign to walk out. Alfredo Santos, I remember, opened the door, and he just kind of nodded, and we knew it was time.
In 1970, over 600 Mexican-American students in Uvalde walked out to protest unjust education system, one of the largest demonstrations during the Chicano civil rights movement, and became entwined with the city's identity.
This incident at Robb is not going to be the first time that the public schools have been in the spotlight of controversy. I was 17 years old. It was seat of the pants. We would plan at night. We would review what happened during the day. So we started at the high school at 10 o'clock, and people started getting up, and you could see all the people moving. People got up and joined us. We had put together a list of 14 demands. We wanted more Mexican-American teachers. We wanted more books having to do with Mexican-Americans in the library, things like that.
We had no Hispanic teachers. We had all white teachers. We had all white school board. Hispanic positions were like the cafeteria workers, the custodians. I do sadly remember my second grade teacher. She walked up to me and got me by my ear and just pulled and pulled and pulled and pulled. And I remember crying and crying, and blood was coming down my cheek right here. And I remember the beatings on her hands for speaking Spanish. That would never happen to the other kids, ever. In a way, we felt inferior because we just thought we were inferior until we got closer to 8th grade, and then we, as kids, started talking to each other.
The walkout started with high school students, and then we got students out of the junior high school, and then students from the elementary schools.
They tried really hard to kind of demoralize us. I remember helicopters flying kind of low because I remember the noise. Their favorite word to use, and Sounds really bad. It was dirty Mexicans. And one of the ladies came out and threw some soap bars at us. And I remember the guns, that they had guns. And at one point, I saw a gun pointed at us. And that was very scary. I think we all were scared.
The school district was forwarding names of students who were in the walkout to the local draft board. I went down to the draft board office and we confronted the lady at the draft board. She looked on some list and she saw my name there. And I told her, well, I'm not even 18. And her last words were, you just wait till you turn 18. I'm gonna get you. So I left during the 5th week of the walkout. We had bet the house and we lost, so to speak.
After 6 weeks, the start of summer ended the walkout, but the Uvalde School Board ignored the students' demands. The protest sparked a decades-long discrimination lawsuit against the school district that led to a desegregation order.
Uvalde was known, we were known for the walkout, and it was one of the biggest in American history. It was a positive thing. Now I can imagine that people will say around the world and say, oh yeah, that's where the shooting happened. But the fact will remain forever that we were known for the walkout.
Some people consider the walkout in Uvalde to be una mancha negra, and something that it's a hurt, and they don't want to bring it up. But it's algo que sí pasó. Just like this massacre on May 24th. Yeah, it's a black mark, but there are people who prefer to have the luddy-duddy version of history, like Dale Evans, like Matthew McConaughey, and non-controversial stories. La vida no es así.
That report by the Texas Tribune reporters Uriel Garcia and Ginisao Hernandez. Juan?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Sewell Chan why you decided to break this story or go back into history at this time in terms of Uvalde, because obviously there were walkouts throughout South Texas in those years, in California in '68, the Chicano high school walkouts then. Why you decided that this was important to tell now?
Juan, well, we felt that it was very important to talk about the activism in this community, that the fact that a half century ago, during the Chicano movement, the Mexican-American political movement, there was a surge of activism. And, my question has been, what's happened since then, right? This is an overwhelmingly working class, overwhelmingly Hispanic community. As Amy pointed out earlier, it's become heavily militarized. It's relatively close to the border. And, these are a lot of the families have, folks in law enforcement working in Homeland Security or Border Patrol or even ICE, which is one reason why South Texas has become more politically contested, with Republicans making some substantial gains in the last few years. And so we felt it was important to connect that history of activism to the story of what's going on today, where the power structure, remains pretty overwhelmingly Anglo. And, what happened to that moment of kind of relative hope and relative, political energy a half century ago.
Sewell Chan, we want to thank you so much for being with us, editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. We want to talk to you about San Antonio, the 53 migrant deaths. We'll post it online at democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan. Please stay safe.